This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
Thank you for joining me once again for my conversation with ChangeMaker Elizabeth Rosin. Elizabeth is a nationally recognized expert in historic preservation and the founder of Rosin Preservation. Elizabeth, in part one, we talked about the use of historic tax credits. How much of an impact on affordable housing does the historic tax credit really have? Or what percentage of affordable housing is created using this tax credit?
So it's hard to know exactly how much of affordable housing is using the tax credit, but I can say in the last 45 years, which is the historic tax credit came into being in 1977. So from 1977 through 2021, about 50% of all historic tax credit projects were for housing, and 1/3 of those were low and moderate income housing. In 2019 alone, there were over 6,000 units of low and moderate income housing, either created or renovated using the historic tax credit. And we're seeing, again, in this 45-year period, we've had a total investment in historic buildings of over $116 billion. And from that, we've created over 185,000 units of low and moderate income housing.
Very nice. Those are impressive numbers.
Yeah, I thought so.
I mean, that's something to brag about because you've got substance here and you're showing that it's worked. Are there regions that are doing it better than others, or is that just kind of case by case how this unfolds?
I wouldn't say that there are regions that are doing it better than others, but there are parts of the country that have figured it out more than others. We have 39 states now that have a companion state incentive, a state historic tax credit, and it's in those locations where a developer can couple their LIHTC with both the state and the federal credit, historic credit, you are really seeing a lot more investment in both historic buildings, but also in affordable housing. A lot of our clients who are affordable housing developers have become very savvy in this arena in looking for historic buildings that would be appropriate because they understand how they can bundle all of these incentives together.
So what do you do with Rosin Preservation? You mentioned that you're working with affordable housing developers. What's your role there?
Our role is to help our clients secure their historic tax credits. So we help them in a number of different ways. Everything from evaluating if a property would be a good fit for this incentive to working very closely with them, with the developer, with the design team, with the contractors, to make sure that their project is going to be compatible with all of the requirements of the program. We're really there from like concept through ribbon cutting. We do the documentation of the building before and after rehab. We prepare the applications, and we also help make sure that their review process goes smoothly. Because the credits are issued at the end of a project, our job really is to make sure that that whole process is smooth, that we've minimized all of the risks, and that there are no surprises, because we know how that can derail a project very quickly.
Do you have any unique ribbon cutting events that you want to describe or tell us about something unique that's happened?
Oh, boy, I love going to ribbon cuttings. One of the things that is most gratifying for me in this work is walking through a building at the very start, before construction started, while it's still in the concept phase, and that it doesn't take long for a vacant building to become derelict. Really just a couple of months, and it just takes on this air of emptiness. And to go from that, whether it's, whatever kind of other things you're finding in the building, to seeing them sparkling and ready for tenants and everybody smiling is so rewarding. I can't think of a specific ribbon cutting story. There have been some on very warm days and some on very cold days. And always the turnaround from groundbreaking to ribbon cutting is remarkable and really satisfying.
I bet you have some fantastic before and after photos of your projects, don't you?
We do. We do. We're all about the before and after.
So you mentioned states that have also a historic tax credit component. So how does the layering work between the two federal and state programs?
Most of the time, the federal and state historic tax credits work together very compatibly. Our office actually did an analysis earlier this year because we were curious, like, how do these different state programs compare? And some are definitely easier than others. So the federal program has a rolling application cycle. It's an uncapped credit. It's very predictable. We know there's no sunset date on it. Developers feel very confident in applying for this credit. And some of the states align with those components very well. Again, they have an uncapped program where there's no cap on the program each year, the amount of credits that can be issued, and no cap on the amount of credits each project can earn. They are very easily transferable credits. The best programs are certificated. And again, they don't have a sunset date attached to them. And for states with those programs, it's really like a 2-for-1 deal. You submit one application, it goes through both layers of review, and you get both credits at the end. Some programs are more complicated and less compatible, where, for instance, if you have an application round, states where there's typically have an application, 1 or 2 application rounds each year, and then you get your federal applications start backing up to align with those state application rounds, and it becomes a little bit more cumbersome.
You've presented at some HUD webcasts talking about redevelopment, incorporation of historic buildings, and you're really seen as the subject matter expert on a lot of this. What does the typical process look like when you start to talk about it, incorporating preservation? When you're presenting this to a community or a group of developers, how do you go about starting from scratch to giving them the vision of what it could be?
Well, it depends who you're talking with. So if I'm talking with a community, we talk about the bigger picture impacts, about supporting community revitalization and community health. We've done projects in a couple of small towns where we had to create a historic district in order for our developer client to get the tax credits on their particular building. And it was a lot of fun to be able to go out and talk about how, once we create the historic district, what the benefits are for the greater community. And people love to see that their place is being recognized in this way. People just want to be seen, and they want to know that the place that's important to them is recognized and that it matters in a bigger picture. So that's one conversation. When we're talking with developers, we're really talking about the additional equity that the state and federal credits bring in. It gets down to the pro forma and the bottom line, and that's really what draws them in the first time.
Out of curiosity, how did you get started working in historic preservation or affordable housing for that matter?
I have a master's degree in historic preservation, so it's what I went to school for. I was a cultural geographer, studied cultural geography as an undergraduate, and I've always been fascinated by this intersection of people and place that gets reflected in the buildings we construct and what our communities look like. So historic preservation was a natural outgrowth of that. I was working for the city of Kansas City, Missouri in the planning department when Missouri created their state historic tax credit program back in 1998. And it seemed like an opportune time to jump into consulting. I had been involved with that process of creating the credit, and was able to harness the knowledge that I had gained to, step into the consulting fray. So, and then affordable housing just kind of happened. As I got into doing more historic tax credit work, just naturally there were developers or clients we began working with who were also interested in the affordable housing sector.
So if you could vision forward, what would be the ask from either a national policy perspective or local developers? What would be the one major ask that you would want to see come to fruition to expand to even more than 185,000 units or 116 billion, which is in and of itself pretty impressive. But if you wanted to say, hey, over in 5 more years, we want to double it, for example, what would you vision out for your area?
I love this question. I've been involved with some advocacy work on behalf of historic tax credits for about the last 5 or 6 years now. And there is a bill that we've been talking up in Washington that we're feeling really good about. I love it because it has really strong bipartisan support. This is a topic that appeals to everybody, big city, small town, rural areas. And what we're hoping for in this bill is some enhancements, some tweaks to the program that will make it more usable for smaller projects in smaller communities and in less populated areas. So think about a downtown Main Street that has a wonderful collection of maybe 2 and 3 story buildings. And this small town, just like the big city, needs affordable housing for their residents and for their workers. And these are the perfect kinds of projects that would be able to take advantage of the enhancements in this bill. So that is my vision, to really see a program that's more accessible to more property owners who can leverage the benefits to create the housing that we need, build the vital and sustainable communities that we all want.
Excellent. I really hope that somebody listening to this is no longer afraid or not willing to tackle, the couple of nuances of developing something that is either a designated historic or is either got some features that require a couple of extra steps, because it can be so much more beautiful on the other side of this. And I like how you have, talked about some of those nuances, whether it's with the tax credit itself or the development or just the features and the sustainability. So, Elizabeth, I thank you for your time. We've been talking with Elizabeth Rosin of Rosin Preservation and working through all of the details related to historic preservation and affordable housing. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Katie. I look forward to talking more in the future.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.